Okay, so we are in Daf Tzadi Gimel Amud Aleph. So yesterday we were discussing the case of can you have walls that are hurtful as opposed to walls that are being helpful, and we were discussing when, as in, is it possible? So we are getting proofs one way or the other way, and now we're still in all that discussion. We still haven't determined whether there's such a thing called siluk mechitza, meaning that if you built in a certain way, that the wall is no longer noticeable, and therefore that wall is now gone because you can't see it. So that's currently on the table as being a problem. The question is there a way for you to actually have an actual wall that isn't helping you? So Amar le Rabba bar Rav Chanan la Beit. Now, Rabba bar Rav Chanan is going to try and give another example. The lo matzina mechitza iser. What do you mean? We never found a wall that makes something forbidden. V'ha Tanya did what in the Beit. Bayit shechetzio mekura, v'chetzio eno mekura, v'fanim kan mutal Israel kan. Ilu hishva et kiryo asur. So here's an example where we say that building a wall makes things worse. Okay, so let me share the screen so that way if you look and see what's happening here. So again, we're back to this discussion of having right. So if we mentioned about the fact that the way that a roof works, at what point the roof is considered to close off a room. So we had a concept called P-tikra yor v'sotein. So by using that principle, that allowed us to say that right below the overhang, the roof or the korah, right like the very edge there, that's where then there's basically a halachic wall going straight down. So now if we have a house that is so if you have a house that's half it has a roof and half doesn't have a roof, and then you have Gefanim Khan. Then on one side you have grapevines. Then so then Mutar Israel Khan. Then immediately to the left of where the roof is, you're allowed to start planting seeds because we say that this counts as a wall. So you don't need to put any break as long as, again, just to the outside where the roof is, you're allowed to start planting seeds that aren't grapes, and that's fine. But ilu hishvet kiryo. But if you were to have, filled in your roof, asur, it's forbidden. You can't do it anymore. El imkein here dalat amot. And then you're back. Once you close in the whole roof, then you're not allowed to fill it in unless you go back to the normal rules of the kilayim and you have to separate 4 amot. So Amar lay, so then Abaye says back, similar to before, hatam silek mechitza. No, that's not the case where the wall made where the wall is on. So what happens is by extending the roof, you actually removed the halachic wall that was there. Right, similar to the case we had yesterday where we had our nice little portico, and then you had your nice steward of petach, and then by building the walls out a little bit, you erased it. So that was yesterday. So today, what we did is by finishing off the roof, the halachic wall that came down from the P-tikra, you were desotem, so that wall, right, the wall extending from the roof straight down. Once you finish off the roof, that wall no longer exists. So it's not a case of a wall being problematic. It's a case where you actually removed a wall, and that's why it's a problem. So now, assuming this discussion seems like it lasted a bit longer because it got it went past when they're all sitting together. Now we've got Rav sending a messenger, to try and figure to figure this out. So he sent it with Shmaya, the son of Zeira. Are you sure we didn't find any mechitza that make things forbidden? Tanya, do we learn in the Breita? There's certain cases when we have walls in a vineyard or orchard that are both kulas and chumras, right? Stringencies and leniencies. So leniencies and stringencies. So what do we mean? So how can we say that walls are both helpful and hurtful? Kerem hanatua ad ikar mechitza. If you planted a vineyard right until the base of the wall, zaream ikar mechitza ve'ela, that you can plant from the immediate base of the wall to on the other side. So, we have a picture. Do you have a good picture of that? Here. So again, so if we had this, so you can see the wall over here. So that means immediately on this side of the wall, we can plant. There doesn't have to be any space as long as there's a wall. So this is how walls are considered to be a kula, because normally if there were no walls, you'd have to spend at least 4 amot gap between the vineyard and and where you're planting your seeds for your grain or whatever else you're planting. Here it's saying, nope, you can plant it right next to each other as long as there's a wall there. Even if the wall is extremely small, it doesn't matter, that's sufficient. And how do we have a chumrah caused by the construction of a wall? So if the vineyard was 11 amot from the wall, then you can't put any seeds in between. So what's the case here? So if the vineyard is currently 11 here, let's scroll down. Sure of this one. Yes, we don't. Okay. So basically saying that it was that you'd have to, let's scroll back up, sorry. Here, this one right here. So it's saying that it would be a problem because you would need to have 4 amot between the vineyard and the grain, and then you'd have to have 4 amot between the grain and the wall. So therefore, if there's less than 11 amot here, this whole area can't be used at all for planting grain. And that's the chumrah of how a wall is less helpful, because you still need to put give enough space on the other side of the grain if you want to put both grain and the vineyard within the same enclosure. You couldn't have the grain touching the wall. So that's where it's a chumrah. So Amr Lay. So then Abaye's response. Litamach otvan mimat nitin. So according to your reasoning, that that once 11 you can't construct. So you can't plant the grain. So I'm going to challenge you based on Mishnah instead. Titnan, as it's stated in the Mishnah, karachat hakarem. Right. So when you're trying to clear out a vineyard, Beit Shammai omrim esri v'arba amot. So Beit Shammai says minimum size for a vineyard is 24 amot. For you to be able to plant anything within that clearing in the middle of the field. Beit Hillel omrim sheish esrei amot. Beit Hillel says the minimum size would have to be 16 amot in the middle in there. So machol hakarem. So how much would you say the perimeter would have to be? So Beit Shammai omrim sheish esrei amot. Beit Shammai says it has to be 16 amot. Perimeter, right? 4 by 4, right? Perimeter gets you 16. Beit Hillel omrim shtei esrei amot. But Beit Hillel says no, it would only need to be the circumference of the perimeter of the vineyard only have to be 12. So now we're trying to figure out which one is which. So Ezohi karachan hakarem. So what is it we say this made a clearing in the vineyard? So what is that? Karem shecharav emtzaito. This is a vineyard whose the center of it you decided to clear out. If there isn't 16 amot empty in the middle there, you can't plant anything there. And if there were 16 amot, then you would give the 4 amot on each side of the vineyard, and you could plant the space in between. And what do we mean by the perimeter? So bein hakerem lagader. This is the distance between the vineyard and the fence. She'im ein sham shtei mesrei ama lo yavi zer l'sham. That if there are 12 amot between the side of the vineyard and the wall, you can't plant anything else there. Hayu sham shtei mesrei ama. But if there were 12 amot, notin lo k'dev l'ratov zerei atomotar. That you can give it the 4 amot gap, and then you can plant seeds. So the question then is, so then why there do we not mention any of the issues we had for our case of the wall making things problematic? So ella hatam lav hainu taima. No, then that wasn't the reason. The issue they're discussing is the chol arba amot lagabe kereb avodat hakereb. Because every 4 amot is considered to be part of the area that you work for the vineyard, and therefore it's considered to be part of it. Lagabe geder, no. So that's why you had this extra gap. But when you're talking about the fence itself, kevan delom is da'ara'an, afkure mafker. But since by the edge of the fence, since you can't actually plant there properly, people are mafker that area. Beni iika arba chashiva ilo lo chashivan. So similarly, if there are 4 amot, it's considered to be a place that's fit to plant. But if there's not more than 4 amot available to plant, then you won't think of planting there because the area is not sufficiently large. So that's not a question of the wall being a problem. That's more of a function of people's thought processes and ability to use it. So that would be why it's not necessarily anything about our case. So we haven't really found a mechitza lister yet. We're still kind of going, okay, like seemingly not yet. So Amar of Yehuda, Shlosha karpefot zeh b'sad zeh, u'shnayim hachitzonim megupafim, v'emtzaim eno megufaf. Okay, so what's our case? So now we're no longer looking at trees. We are now back to looking. We're now at these diagrams over here. Okay, so we have these 3 enclosures that are linked together, and each of them have a when you go from the 2 outer ones to inner ones, you'll notice there are the gifufe, the little outcropping guys, right? That you walk into, you notice you're switching yards, but from the middle to the outsides, you're done. The yachid, right? But the middle one, there's nothing to indicate that there's no it's like nothing jutting out. So v'yachid bezeh, v'yachid bezeh. There's an individual on each one of the larger. There's in each one of the karpefot, there's an individual. So Nasa Kishiyarav Non Lahen Kolt Sarkan Vadai. So therefore, everybody in this group has the status of a shayara, a caravan, and therefore they each of them get the area that they need, and they can all carry in that whole area. So, right, so therefore the whole thing becomes one large, it's just one large yachid, no problems. But MCE Mugufav, but let's say the next diagram where we where the bigger one is the one on the bigger square is the central courtyard, and the person on the right. So the person in the middle, when he goes each way, he sees the mugufaf, the gifufe, the outcroppings, right? But whereas when the other two guys are walk towards him, they don't see it. So in that case, right? So meaning there's one in each of them. Then they don't get the whole area. Rather, they only get 2 baits per person. So, right. So the problem here being is that because the middle one is considered to be the primary one, and the outer two are just secondary to the central one. Therefore, we're limited by the largest middle one size, and therefore it doesn't become like a caravan, and instead each of them only get 2 baits per person, therefore a total of 6. No more unlimited plan. So Ibailahu. So now where the question is, so okay, so I understand why that is, but let's change things up a bit. What if there's 1 on each of the outer ones, but 2 in the middle? What's the case then? Right? If they were to, so that if they exit one way, then there's going to be 3 there, and if they exit the other way, there's going to be 3 there. So that means that we right? So what's the case? Do we end up getting limited or not? So, right, so if they do that, that would mean that we have, that's 3 are considered to be a caravan and 1 is not, and that should be fine. Now, and so should we say that therefore that we say that these 2 people we push them to either side, and therefore we now have a set of 3, which gives us our very nice caravan, or not? Or Dilma, Chad lahachanapik, v'chad lahachanapik. Or do you assume the 2 guys in the middle, they're going to split off. One will go to the right, one will go to the left. And therefore, we won't have a caravan. We'll simply have 2 pairs. And 2 pairs are not a caravan. A set of 3 makes a caravan. The imtim salomar chad lahachanapik. And if you wanted to say that the 2 people in the middle each to one of the sides, right? That's their primary area that they're planning on using over Shabbos. So shtayim bezeh, shtayim bezeh, vecha b'mtzayimau. So if you say that, that's a little problem. So then what if we have the case? So there's 2 people on each of the on the right, in the right one, 2 people in the left one, and 1 in the middle. That what happens then? Hacha vada ilhachanabik platahava, ilhachanabik platahava. Do we say that? Definitely, we're going to wind up having some way. We're going to have a shara. We're going to have a caravan because there's going to be 3 in one location within our enclosure. So Adilma, Ema lahachanapik, ve'emar lahachanapik. Or we could say no, that since he might go to the right or to the left, therefore it actually we wind right back up where we started, where we only get limited by the person because he hasn't fully determined if he's a part of any group, and if you don't have them all be part of one group, then we don't have a caravan. Hilchata b'ayin l'kula. So actually, at the end of the day, we conclude that all of them get these spaces if they're a caravan. So no worries, they all have a limited space. So Amar Rav Chisda. So then Rav Chisda said, now returning to Sadi Gimel Amud Bet, right? So we've been talking about the So we're going to be switching topics. So till now, right? So we first discussed the case of planting for Tzkilei Kerem. Then and how walls affect that. Then we were discussing the case of when you're in an enclosure, how does number of people affect it becoming a caravan based on the structure of the area. Now we're moving to another case. Okay, so Amar of Chisda. Gidud Chamisha Umechitza Chamisha. If you have five, if there's sorry, let me scroll down. So we have here we go on the bottom here. So we have the embankment right by the water. That's 5 amo, and then you decided to build another 5 amo mechitza on top of it. All right, so gidu chamisha mechitza chamisha ein mitzarfin ad sheyeh kula o kulo begidud o kulo mechitza. So if they so in terms of the use of an embankment versus using a wall, so it doesn't work if you have half and half. It has to be either a full embankment of 10 or a full wall of 10. We don't allow you to combine the two. So that's what Chutz is opinion. So Metzger, the Gemara is gonna question that. Shtei chatzerot zol lamala mizu ve'alyona gvoa min hatachtona asara tvachim. או שיש בה גידול 5 מחיצה 5 מערבן 2 ואין מערבן 1. פחות מכאן מערבן 1 ואין מערבן 2. So this is the case of two courtyards of differing heights. One of whom is, here we go. That's this case right here, right? So then we say that the bottom one is meaning the gidud, meaning the amount of height just from like the ground level difference is only 5, and then the next courtyard put a wall of 5 there. So or vice versa, right? I'm sorry. So we say if the gap there is 10, or if the gap there is meaning it's 10, a wall of 10, or a embankment of 10, or an embankment meaning a ground level difference of 10, or if we have 5 from the ground level difference and 5 from the wall itself, we force them to make 2 separate arrows, and they can't make 1 arrow because they're considered to be 2 separate areas. But if it's less than that, then it's only 1 arrow, and you can't make they can't decide to make 2 separate areas, so they're considered to be 1 area. So the issue is that this one but now we just said that there's 5 of gidud and 5 of mechitza, right? 5 of embankment and 5 of a wall, which is directly against what Chisda said. So Amarav, so now Rav's going to come to defense. Moder Chisda betachtona, hoil varoa pnei asara. So Rav said, Chisda agrees that for people in the bottom courtyard, that's considered to be 10, because when they look to the right, as in the diagram, right, the people who are below, when they scroll down a little bit, so it can be a little clearer. Here we go. Right, so when you see the people down here, when they look at it, they see 10 tvachim. Right, sure, part of it's made out of dirt, part's made out of another material, but that's still a wall of 10. So Ihachi tachtona ta'arev shnayim, v'lo ta'arev echad. Alyona lo ta'arev lo echad v'lo shnayim. So if that's the case, that would mean that but now we're saying that that's even more of a problem, because that would mean that the people living in the lower courtyard, they can only make a separate eruv. They can't join with the people up top, whereas the people who are living above can't join them below. So therefore, they can't. The people who are living up on top, on the upper level, can't even make an eruv at all. So what's happening? So what's the case? We're missing something. So Amarabba Barula. So Rabbi Barula Hafela said. So what is this case where we say that Rav Chisda would agree that they're definitely separate? Amarabba Barula Kagon Shahayta Alyona Megufefet Ad Esther Amod. No, the case is where there was a protrusion for part of it up to 10 amot. So see here, so even though for most of the area it's only 5 and 5, but on the edges it went all the way up to 10, the wall. So that's why it would then work. So if that's the case, then what about the last half of the Breita? Hachot mikan ma'arvin echad ve'en ma'arvin shnayim. So, but then what do you deal with the last half, where it mentions that if it was less than the 10 amot total, the 10 tvachim total, you would make 1 eruv and not 2. Ibaya chad tarev, ibaya trei tarev. So then, if this is the case where it's gefufe, then the answer then what we have here is we basically have a petach on the wall, right? And once you have a petach, that would mean that you can choose, once you have a manner of getting from courtyard A to courtyard B, that means that you can have a choice. You can either make 2 eruvs or 1 eruv. So what is the, so that we still don't understand. Now our Mishnah doesn't make any sense. Because why are you going to be making? So what still would still understanding him, because again, then why are we saying that you can't? You have to choose either one to make a joint Eruv or separate Eruvin. You should have a choice if it looks like the picture we diagram number 66, right? That's a problem. So rather, what must the case be? Marava braid rava kagon shnifratza tachtona b'mu'al elyona. So what happens is that the lower courtyard is completely breached towards the upper one. So you see here, right? So for the lower courtyard, there's a full breach here when you're looking from this courtyard to the other courtyard, right? Here it's now the gap is, as you see here, it's only 9, and there is no, and as opposed to when we have a petach, a breach is no good, right? This isn't considered, this is too wide, and there it's going straight on over, and there's nothing else to say or do. They simply can't do it. Once they're forced to join the people above them. So that's why it's going to end up being one Eruv. Ihachi, tachtona tre ta'arev, tre lo ta'arev. If that's the case, then the lower one can only make one Eruv. You can only join with the upper courtyard, but it can't make its own Eruv. Elyona ibaya tre ta'arev ibaya chat ta'arev. Wait, but that still leaves us, based on that picture I showed you, that it would mean that the people who are on the upper yard, they have a choice, because they could either make their own Eruv, or they could join the layer below them. That still isn't Rav Chassid's opinion. So in Hachanami, so correct, right? That would be the case, and that would not quite fit with Rav Chassid's opinion, but that is what we're saying. And what we were talking about the whole time about you can only make one Eruv and not two. We weren't talking about the upper courtyard. We're talking about the lower courtyard, and that's why it works. Okay, this making sense? Yeah, I'll quickly sum that up. Okay, so again, here, let's look at the pictures. So again, the initial statement we had was about, we were talking about the case with access between the different yards, right? That was the previous case. Then we got to talking about how it works with the, sorry, that's too far back. Okay, just from this picture right here on 61. Okay, 61. So when is this wall considered to be no good wall according to Rav Chisda? It's when when the half of the wall is made up of dirt and half the wall is made up of another material, right? So so there's 5 amot of ground level, 5 tvachim of ground level, and 5 tvachim of wall. So those don't combine. So then we are now at diagram number 64, where we said when we have 2 different courtyards and there's 5 tvachim of ground level and 5 tvachim of wall, we say that it makes a full gap. And then we're like, wait a minute, this is going, how could you have saying that we can combine types of walls while at the same time saying that you can't combine types of walls? So we answered that, well, that it depends on, in order to combine them, well, there must be that there's a wider there's kifufe left over. There's the extra outcroppings from the side of the walls that are still there, that are the full height, that themselves are 10 tvachim, and therefore those are full walls. And our issue is with the middle section, right? That's the question of, is that section good or not? But then we're saying, wait, but then we have the issue that it should be that either if the middle wall is big enough, then that would mean that we have to separate, and if not, then we should be able to choose whether we make it or not, because now we have a petach between the two. We have a way of going between A and B. So rather, what the conclusion is so then we say, maybe it's that when there's a breach between them, and that's why the bottom courtyard is forced either to do its own eruv if it's if the wall is sufficiently high, or not if it's too low. Then we're like, okay, so that explains the lower courtyard. What about the upper courtyard? The upper courtyard still has its, its full wall differential. It's got its wall on the side here separating it out. This is the wall of 10 over here, even though it's not a wall for the lower courtyard, it's a little wall for the upper courtyard. So what's going on? So then and then the answer is that you're right. That when we had the Mishnah, we're trying to bring a proof against Rav Chisda, so it was only taught, like the whole Mishnah was from the reference point of the lower courtyard, and that's why lower courtyard would have to either be separate or join, whereas the upper courtyard always has the upper hand, and you can choose to join or not to join. Okay, in case somebody's wondering about the usages of dirt walls, are they really functional? So the answer is they really are functional. Actually, majority of the Great Wall of China is a dirt wall. Fun fact. Anyways, Darish Maremar. Yidur Chamisha Mechitza Chamisha Mitzarfin. So now Maremar doesn't hold like Rav Chisda and says that if you have 5 tachim of embankment, 5 tachim of a wall, that's fine, right? That they join together to make a 10 tachim wall. Ashkei Ravina Rav Acha Brei Rava. So Ravina found Rav Acha son of Rava. Amrlei Tani Mar Midi Mechitza. So he says, "Do you have anything to teach me about mechitza?" Amrlei Lo. So he said, "No." So I'm not sure what to do with that. So, but Hilchata Gidur Chamisha Umechitza Chamisha Mitzarfin. So, right. So afterwards, Ravina asked him, "Wait a minute, do you have anything to add to what they said?" And he's like, "No," meaning like, i.e., he agrees. And therefore, the conclusion then today is that unlike Rav Chisda, we pass like Remar that Gidu Chamisha Mechitza Chamisha Mitzarfin. That if your wall is part is made out of dirt and part is made out of wall, they combine to make by wall I mean made out of whether it be made out of stone, wood, strings, love wood. However you want to construct your wall, whichever materials, that would work. Okay. Beit Rav Hoshaya. Yor Nevarim Shabbat Mahu Sheyasru. So now we are going way back. The question of what happens when people show up on Shabbos. How does that affect our usage of this courtyard? So, right. So Amar Rav Chisda Tashma. So what is here? I've got a proof for you. So Chatzar Gedola Shnifritza L'Ktana. So if you have a large courtyard that opens into a small courtyard, Hagdola Muteret Vaktana Asura. So if we have a large courtyard and a small courtyard that were next to each other, and then the wall falls down in between. So we say that the large courtyard is still able to carry, the small one is not, because it's considered to be an entrance to the small. So the small one's considered to be the entryway to the large one. So therefore, the large one can carry, the small one cannot. Tamaraba Amar Mibaod Yom Mifritza. So Rabba says, no, this Mishnah we're talking case where it was breached till on Friday, but otherwise, once it was mutar, it remains mutar. So Amar Abaye. The lo tamamar amar. So Abaye says, no, don't say that that's possible way to say it. Don't say maybe it was breached. Say it was breached. Daha marhud amar didn't master say, meaning didn't Ruchas himself state. By mine mirav Huna, by mine mirav Yehuda. The question was being asked from Rav Yehuda or from Rav Huna. Irev derech hapetach, v'nistam hapetach. Irev derech chalon, v'nistam hachalon ma'u. What happens if you made an eruv using an entrance, or using a door, or using a window, and then it was stopped up? So is the eruv still good? So the Amar Li, and you told me Shabbat kevan shehutra hutra. You told me that as long that the closing of the stopping up of that access point is only a problem if it happened before Shabbos. But if it happened on Shabbos, once it was mutar on Shabbos, it remains mutar. Okay. So let's squeeze in. Okay. Actually, no. Let's not do the next. The next one will be part. It goes pretty far into smart stuff. Okay. So let's just sum up what we've covered so far, so that way we can have it all clear in our heads, because we covered a lot of different diagrams and pictures. So we're gonna go through it all again. Anybody have any questions in particular? Please please chime in as I scroll past the picture. If not, I'll simply assume that we're going to go through all the pictures we covered today, because there's quite a bunch and a lot of topics covered as well. Okay, so the first topic we were discussing was the case of, again, can walls hurt you or help you? So the first one was we were talking about was talking about Chaim, about how initially when we have a half roof structure, that the roof can help you, and then when you fill in the roof, that right, so because normally Chaim can't be planted. You mean you can't plant within 4 amot of the vineyard, or you'll end up being in violation of Chaim. But we say that if there's a wall, then then it allows us to plant. And then here we said that the seeds are considered to be, assuming that there is the P ticker yod risotem, that the edge of the roof going straight down is a wall, and therefore you were allowed to plant right up to where the roof ended. On each side, one side we could plant our vineyard, and the other side we could plant our grain. But that's not. But once you filled the roof, that's no longer the case. And we said no, that's not a case of a wall hurting you. That's a case of you remove the wall by your construction, right? So it's that's not a wall that forbids. It's the fact that you, by constructing, you erased the halachic wall. So we also were discussing the case of the distance you can plant relative to the sides of the vineyard, and we mentioned that you always have to have a gap of 4, and how there's a gap on the left, that the wall being here would mean that you can't end up actually using the 4 amot wide planting strip over here. Then we said no, it's not that you can't use that 4 amot wide planting strip. The main point is that the main problem is that people just tend to, if you have an area of planting that's less than 4 amot wide, right? So people wouldn't plant there, and the reason why you do the 4 amot next to the wall are no good is because in this case you wouldn't. It's not worth the effort of planting next to the wall, and only next to the wall, because planting next to the wall tends to lead to inferior produce. So you wouldn't have spent all your time and energy on planting over there. And we then went to discuss the case of the enclosures as a link to each other. And we said how if there is no clear distinction of who's the actual primary person, right, where we have where he, right, where again, he has his own, he's in his own zone, and then there's these outcroppings, and there's a middle guy in his own little zone, and then there's the third guy on the right in his zone of the enclosure, of the carpes. So we said in this case, they become because none of them have there's no clear which one is the primary location. We say that we combine all 3 of them to be a caravan, therefore they can carry in the whole area. But we said in the middle case, there's a problem because the middle one is the primary one, and therefore if you don't have the 3 people located in the middle one, it's no good. So then we discussed, what if there's 2 people, 3 people in a section, right? Or if there's 2 on each side and 1 in the middle. And we said that no, those are all bad cases, because there's never any guarantee that until you actually have 3 in one location. The reason why we say that you can't carry it is because we're not sure whether you'll go to point A or point B. And once we're in that case of doubt, we're going to remain in that case of doubt. Then we went to the case of the Rav Chisda about can you combine different types of walls? Rav Chisda was saying you can't. Then we're like, wait, then we had the question that based on that you can't combine an embankment as a wall. But then we had the problem of the Mishnah says that in a courtyard that you can. And then we kept going, back and forth and stating when you can, when you can't. Right, and in which cases, and when we're saying, oh, maybe it's because of there's giving gifufe, maybe it's because right, and that's why. That was a bit of a resistance. Would have to admit that if you're looking from the lower side, that you see 10, and you see that it's 10, that even though that you'd have to agree that it works. So and then we mentioned the case of of how. So at the end of the day, that would, even according to their Chista, that would mean that the people down below, if it's 10, can't. The people above still be able to. And then we said, or right. So, but the problem is that people up top could choose because when we mentioned the Yefufe on the side here, part of being taller, that would mean that it's now considered to be a petach and they can access it. So that would mean that they can actually go straight from one into the other. So, and then at the end, we actually end up concluding that you're right, it should be a problem, but we end up, right, the Chista, right, so that is what he said, and that the whole Mishnah, that in order for Chista, he must say that the whole Mishnah is for just the lower courtyard, not the upper courtyard. And we concluded by saying how, well, that may be Rav Chista's opinion, Ramar Darshan's otherwise, and that actually is how we end up concluding, is that we passed in according to Ramar, and then we also mentioned the question of when we say that this breach happened, we started discussing the cases of when exactly did the breach occur, happening before Shabbos versus on Shabbos, and we were mentioning that the issue being is, again, if it happened before Shabbos, then that would mean that your Eruv hadn't gone into effect. What happens on Shabbos, right? Either the breach had occurred or the breach had been closed up. We say that whatever happened on Shabbos wouldn't be a factor according to many, because of the concept of keva shehutra hutra. Once it is mutter, it remains mutter, and therefore, even if the wall had collapsed, that would not have made it an issue.
Rabbi, do we use that rule today? So I think, let's say that, going into Shabbos, the air was fine, and then there's a big storm and a piece of it falls, so we're good. We don't have to worry about it. Is that in Toronto? Is that what they use?
No. So the answer is not really. The case of Beit, when that occurs, what you end up doing is we end up not telling people that Eruvin is down. But then it would be preferred if, let's say, you notice that it's super windy and there's reason to believe that there are down power lines and that the Eruv itself has fallen down. So as in B'di Evid, we wouldn't tell people to stop carrying because of it, but we because Mutav Shu Shogun Yomi Mazidin, because we don't really pass it according to the Kivan Shutra Hutra. So yeah, so that would be what we would do. So we wouldn't really rely on that because if the walls fall down, that would, especially in our case, it would end up destroying almost all the walls would be destroyed almost simultaneously based on the way modern Eruvin are constructed. So if the Eruv were to fall down on Shabbos, so generally we would it would be preferable not to carry. If you let's say if you'd happen to have walked on past the Eruv and then it fell down, general rule, you probably should not. But again, if you don't know, you can again, you can rely on it. So that's why it's always recommended to not do an Eruv walk on Shabbos. Because the one time that I did it, the Eruv was turned out the Eruv had fallen, like the wire by one place had fallen down. Luckily, it was able to be combined with the fact that. But there's the two Eruvs that overlapped, and it only fell over in the part that overlapped. So therefore, if we combine this Eruv and that Eruv together, we still have enough walls to piece it together. But yeah, so don't do Eruv checks on Shabbos.
Well, yeah, I mean, how effectively would you do it? Like, Paul Revere start running and yelling, the Eruv is down, the Eruv is down.
Right, and that's why you simply it's because are people going to listen to you, and are they going to actually change what they're doing? It's like they're carrying, they're all of a sudden empty their pockets wherever they are, and that's it. So it's since most people won't end up listening, therefore, we simply say we just don't tell them, and and because there is, even though we don't possibly that shita of Kevin Hutra for the purposes of the wall, that's how we would operate. If this ever happens, please consult your local Orthodox rabbi for what you should do at the time.
Sure, thank you.
All right.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Shkoch.
Right, yeah.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.